It's time to say goodbye to After Effects' inner shadow layer style, because in this video, I'm going to take you through a new method of creating inner shadows that is not only far more flexible and powerful, it also looks great too. So let's dive into it. Hi, I'm Riley from Chunk, and if you're any a bit like me, you may also think that the inner shadow layer style leaves a lot to be desired. It's slow to render, it doesn't look very good, nor is it even realistic. And perhaps worst of all, you can only apply one instance of it to a layer at any given time. But thankfully, Plugin Everything has come in and saved us from ever using that layer style again with their latest plugin called Shadow Studio 2. Shadow Studio 2 creates gorgeous shadows with realistic light fall off and softness. I've been using this plugin extensively recently, and I've been applying it to just about everything, and now I want to take you through how I used it in this animation loop I made for my birthday back in May. To start with, I've imported a character that I previously animated in Moho and have pre-comped that PNG sequence. I'll then apply the Shadow Studio 2 plugin to that pre-comp. The first thing to do is to change the shadow type to an inner shadow. For this animation, I want my light source to be coming in from the top right, so I'll change the angle of my shadow to be on the opposite side of this. As I want this to be a pretty subtle shadow, I'm going to reduce the opacity start to about 4 and then the opacity end to 0%. The default distance and softness works really well with these characters, so I'm just going to keep it on those. To make these shadows feel a little less stuck on, my go-to move here is to change the color of the shadow to a deep blue, and then change the shadow's blending mode from normal to overlay. By doing this, we adjust the hue of the shadows a little bit, as well as darkening the color overall and increasing its saturation, and just looks hands down way better than if you just used a straight black color. But Shadow Studio isn't just limited to shadows, even though the name would suggest that. We can actually use it to create gorgeous rim lighting. We can duplicate the effect, spin the angle around 180 degrees, and change the color to white. Now this actually already looks amazing, but if we wanted some brighter light, we can change the blending mode from overlay to add, and then adjust some properties to make the effect more subtle. We get these gorgeous light streaks coming through our characters, and if I reduce the softness even more, we get some really nice defined light rays. Now if I try and replicate this look using layer styles, I can recreate the initial inner shadow well enough, but my first issue would be here is that I need a duplicate layer since I can't have two inner shadows on the one layer. But that's okay, we can work with this. We can just make a duplicate of the layer, make the layer black, and then change the blending mode of our layer to add, and it works just fine. But we simply can't recreate the light rays with layer styles. Instead, we just get these blobby masses of white. The difference lies in how these two methods calculate light fall off. The layer styles method takes a silhouette of the layer, translates it accordingly, and then just simply blurs it. Since it's only using one sample, the shadow is just flat and the blurring is linear. Shadow Studio 2 instead works with multiple samples and translates and blurs each according to the inverse square law. The inverse square law, boiled down, basically states that the intensity of a light source or a shadow should fall off exponentially, essentially not in a linear fashion. We can see this clearly when we turn the softness down to 0 and reveal all the samples that Shadow Studio is using. Each sample builds upon the distance of the last, and likewise when it comes to each sample's blur, it's mimicking the exponential fall-off that we find in the real world. So pretty much we take all of the science, the coding, the maths, all to make our animations look a little bit prettier. But let's take this one step further and add some colors to our inner highlight instead, using a pretty cool technique. To start off with, we're going to take away the highlight effect from this composition and add another instance of the animation pre-comp. We're also going to just solo this layer and toggle the transparency grid so that the process is a bit easier to understand. For this look, we're going to be using the colorama effect to colorize our layer based upon its alpha channel. So that means we need to get a cutout of our inner highlight first. So we'll add a fill effect to our layer and set the color to black so that we can get a silhouette of our layer. Next, we'll add Shadow Studio 2. We'll make it an inner shadow and change the shadow color to white. We'll angle it to be pointing towards our imaginary light source and tweak the distance, softness, and opacity. I've also found that changing the easing mode to ease in and out works great in this case. To generate a smooth alpha channel, we're going to be using the extract effect. This effect is a keying effect that creates transparency based upon a layer's luminosity. As I adjust the black point, the effect starts to eat away at the dark aspects of the layer until it reaches a max value of 255 and the whole image is keyed out. To complete this effect, we then take the black softness slider and max that one out as well. This brings back the brightest aspects in a gradual process, leaving us with the perfect cutout where the white is fully opaque and the black is fully transparent. With this step done, we can then go ahead and apply the Colorama effect. But before we go and change any of the colors, we have to uncheck the Modify Alpha checkbox that is found in the Modify section so that we maintain that nice cutout we just made in the step before. To adjust the colors, we'll dive into the Output Cycle section and change the preset palette to Ramp Gray, as this is a pretty nice starting point. For these colorized inner shadows, my favorite look by far is starting white hot, moving into a warm orange hue, going to a raspberry hue, and then finishing off with black. To add a new color, you can just click on the wheel where you want the color to be. Starting at 9 o'clock, we're going to select a nice warm orange, then at 3 o'clock, I'll select a raspberry color. At any point, you can drag these points around to fine tune the look if you want to. All that is left for us to do now is to unsolder this layer and change the blending mode of the layer to screen. And would you look at that? The colors that have been introduced, the brightness of the shadow just adds so much depth and light to the scene. It's just phenomenal. If you're not quite satisfied with the look, you can just dive straight back into Shadow Studio 2 or the Colorama effect and adjust any of the properties or colors until you get a nice looking inner highlight. If you're noticing some crunchy edges around your artwork, like I have around the cat's head here, adding a simple choker and setting it to -1 and placing it before the Shadow Studio 2 effect can help lessen this effect drastically. I love this look so incredibly much. The amount of light and color and aesthetic that it can introduce to your scenes and characters makes this one of the best plugins that you can get at the moment. And this isn't even talking about its original purpose, which is realistic drop shadows. I can't emphasize enough how much the Shadow Studio 2 plugin has become ingrained in my workflow, so your next move is to go to the Plugin Everything's Gumroad and at least downloading the trial version of the plugin. And definitely do consider buying it as well, because the value and versatility that it can bring to your project is incredible, and the lighting effects that you can make on otherwise flat scenes makes it an instant buy for me. To sweeten the deal, we've also made a pack of 3 presets for Shadow Studio 2 that you can download for free on our Gumroad, so you don't have to go through all the steps that we just did in this video. The first preset is for a colorized inner highlight that you can apply to a separate layer and then change the blending mode to screen. Another one is for a standard highlight and shadow with adjusted properties and linked angle controls so that when you change one, the other one will follow on the other side. And then a third one which is full lighting, which is the same as before but also includes a linked drop shadow. We've got a full project breakdown of this birthday post in the pipeline as we speak, as well as many other After Effects and Moho based tutorials, breakdowns and tips and tricks. So if you don't want to miss out, make sure you subscribe. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure you give it a like and we'll see you in the next one.